get mad. A bitch inbox me. A bitch inbox me and tell me. Cause she get mad. Let me tell you how she is. She said this shit. I probably do. I probably do. 9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10. The lie. 9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10. We have herpes. 9 times out of 10. We have herpes. Okay? So, she get mad. A bitch inbox me. A bitch inbox me and tell me. Cause she get mad. Let me tell you how she is. She said this shit. I probably do. I probably do. 9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10. The lie. 9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10. We have herpes. 9 times out of 10. We have herpes. Okay? So.
Oh, I ain't get to tell you. I ain't get to tell about Udi. Then.
I swear you'll die.
Then I gotta die like that. You told my shit.
Come on.
Damn, bitch.
Give me my
I
phone.
gotta die if I tell what happened.
Give me my phone.
That's crazy, y'all. I ain't really gonna die behind this, so y'all won't know that tea right now.
Give me my phone.
Mark done got quiet. Where he at? He right here. He getting mad. He don't like the truth coming
On the
out.
surface, it was a picture-perfect life. Zaria Khadejah Carr, known by thousands as Duchess Dior, lived in a modest house in Twin City, Georgia, with her husband and their 2 children. Online, she was radiant, confident, stylish. A young black mother with a presence that drew admiration and envy in equal measure. With every post and polished smile, she built a brand that radiated luxury, independence, and family pride. But behind the filters and captions was a reality far more fragile, held together by silence, survival, and the unbearable weight of secrets too dangerous to tell. Her husband, Zaria Carr, known on Facebook as The Frenchman, was a dog breeder with a sharp voice and visible presence. He called himself a boss, a hustler, a man who didn't take disrespect lightly. Together, their posts painted the life of a united couple, hustling together, raising kids, and chasing dreams. But those close enough to listen without looking knew something else. The love that brought them together had morphed into something unrecognizable, violent, possessive, paranoid. In the weeks leading to June 14, 2025, the tension between them was growing visible, like cracks in a wall too long ignored. Their arguments began to spill into the public. Subtle at first, cryptic Facebook posts, eye-rolling live streams, vague jabs. But soon it became clear. Their home wasn't just crumbling, it was erupting. On the evening of June 14, 2025, something shifted in the silence. At exactly 6:05 p.m., a message appeared on Zaria Khadejah Carr's Facebook page. It wasn't stylized, it wasn't filtered. There were no hashtags, emojis, or curated photos. Just words. Stark, urgent, desperate. I really don't know what to do. I need help before I lose my life or freedom. My kids need me. Those 17 words weren't written for attention. They were a flare in the dark, the voice of a woman staring down a future she could feel closing in around her. It wasn't content. It was a cry. One stripped of pride. One that carried no vanity, no ego, no brand protection. Just fear. A deep, shaking, soul-level terror that had built over time and finally boiled over. To understand the weight of that status, you have to understand what Zaria had carried in silence. Behind the curated reels and parenting advice, behind the influencer outfits and gentle affirmations, was a woman whose home had become a prison. Friends had noticed her recent withdrawal. Family members described a sudden coldness in her voice during phone calls. Her bright social presence had dulled into tension, her captions shrinking into vagueness, her smile, less frequent, more forced. Those weren't just signs of stress. They were the quiet signals of someone under siege. In that post, she didn't ask for likes. She didn't seek sympathy. She asked for help. But the internet, cruel in its detachment, responded the way it always does. Some scrolled past, some typed encouragements without action. Others looked at her words and thought, maybe it's just drama. Maybe she's exaggerating. and a few, disturbingly, treated her plea like entertainment, an episode in an ongoing saga they could comment on, consume, and move past. No one called emergency services. No one notified authorities. No neighbor checked in. The warning, clear, honest, and raw, was swallowed in the noise of digital apathy. But that status was never just a vent. It was the final breath before the plunge. A declaration of danger from a woman who knew she might not see the next sunrise. Not because of sickness or accident, but because she feared the man in her home. A man she had loved. A man she had once trusted. A man she now feared more than anything else. Inside that house, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Words had likely already been exchanged. Accusations, silence, threats too familiar to even register as shocking. It was a place where love had mutated into fear, and fear had fermented into hatred. In that moment, Zaria wasn't just anticipating something terrible. She knew it was coming. Her words weren't a metaphor, they were a countdown. Each second that passed after that post was a step closer to the edge. Two people in the same space, one terrified of what might happen, and the other nursing an anger that had already decided what would. The tragedy that followed wasn't sudden. It was built brick by brick over months, maybe years, shaped by control, gaslighting, unresolved trauma, and a dynamic that festered behind closed doors. It didn't erupt from nowhere. It was boiling in real time. And by the time the world understood the gravity of her words, the moment had already passed. The explosion came not in screams, but in silence. Not in flashing red alerts, but in the cold glow of a phone screen. The time to act had come, and gone. And Zaria, Duchess Dior, the influencer, the mother, the survivor, was already spiraling into her final hours. At approximately 7:45 p.m. on June 14, 2025, a notification buzzed across hundreds of phones. The Frenchman is live. It was a live stream from the couple's shared home in Twin City, Georgia, and within moments, viewers tuned in, not knowing they were about to witness one of the most disturbing and heartbreaking broadcasts ever to unfold on Facebook. The screen came to life with a flicker. No intro, no setup. Just a room bathed in dim light, tension hanging thick in the air. Zaria sat upright, voice quivering but steady. Her eyes were heavy, not just from exhaustion, but from carrying something deeper. Pain, fear, resentment, maybe even acceptance. She had reached the end of something, though at the time, no one realized just how final that ending would be. Sitting beside her was Carr, shirtless, expression blank, breathing heavily. He didn't say much in the beginning. His body language spoke for him. Slouched, boiling, rage radiating through clenched jaws and twitching hands. He didn't look at Zaria. He didn't have to. The threat wasn't in his words. It was in his presence. For 16 minutes, the world tuned in as two lives, once intertwined by love, completely came apart. There were no soft lights, no rehearsed performances. It wasn't entertainment. It was raw, unfiltered reality. And it was horrifying. Zaria addressed the camera, not her husband. Her words weren't gentle. They weren't coded. She was no longer trying to protect anyone. She spoke of betrayal. How the love that was once promised to protect her had turned into a weapon used to isolate and torment her. She revealed details many didn't expect. Claims of infidelity, diseases, and manipulative love spells meant to bend her will. She spoke of how he controlled her movement, monitored her interactions, and treated her like a possession rather than a partner. Her voice cracked at times, but she kept going. Because for her, this wasn't a rant. It was a final act of defiance. And as she bared her truth to the viewers, most of whom were strangers, Shamarcus remained mostly silent. But it wasn't the silence of someone who didn't care. It was the silence of someone who was listening, closely, coldly, calculating every word she said. The tension inside that small room was unbearable. You could almost hear his heartbeat. You could feel the pressure building behind his silence. He wasn't just angry. He was humiliated. And in his mind, the world was watching him lose control, not of the relationship, but of the narrative, of the image, of the fear that used to keep her quiet. Then, in a moment that would send chills across the internet, Shamarcus leaned forward slightly, barely audible through the microphone, and whispered, "You're going to make me kill you." No shout, no scream, just a sentence, delivered not in fury, but in cold certainty. Zaria didn't flinch. Her eyes widened for a split second, but she continued. Not because she felt safe, but because she had nothing left to protect. She wasn't speaking to Shamarcus anymore. She was speaking to whoever might be listening. She needed someone, anyone, to see the truth before it was too late. Her words weren't for sympathy. They were a testimony, a record, a receipt of the emotional, physical, and psychological warfare she'd endured. It was her last chance to name the danger, to scream for help without raising her voice. Meanwhile, the comments rolled in by the hundreds. Some viewers were shocked. A few begged her to leave. A handful tried to lighten the moment with jokes. Others typed "run" in all caps. But none of them were there. None of them could stop what was already in motion. The argument escalated. Shamarcus began to murmur, barely restraining his fury. The camera shifted slightly, catching the edges of movement. Zaria's words sharpened, more deliberate now, like she was racing time, as if she knew the clock was winding down. Then suddenly, the feed ended. No warning, no fade-out, no screams or cries for help, just an abrupt silence. A black screen. The live stream was over. For many, the end of that video was confusing. Viewers refreshed the page. Some laughed, thinking it was just another digital spat. Others sent messages. But there would be no response. No follow-up post. No second video. That flicker of a camera going dark was not the end of an argument. It was the beginning of a murder. And for Zaria, who had used her final breath to make the world listen, that moment of blackness marked her final appearance alive. It was 9:30 p.m. on June 14th, 2025, when the emergency call came in. A neighbor had reported what they believed to be a single gunshot. Sharp, sudden, and then a chilling silence. No follow-up noises, no shouting, just stillness. A quiet too heavy for a home where 2 children lived and a live stream had ended not long before. Within minutes, flashing lights painted the quiet suburban road in red and blue. Officers from the Twin City Police Department approached the Carr residence with caution. They had responded to domestic calls before. They had seen shouting matches, pushed furniture, broken glass. But what waited for them inside this time was unlike anything they'd encountered. The front door was unlocked. The home, eerily still. What had once been a place filled with laughter, birthdays, baby cries, and social media glamour, now echoed with nothing but dread. As officers moved through the rooms, the silence was only broken by the static on their radios and the creak of the floor beneath their boots. Then they saw her. Zaria lay motionless in the center of the living room floor. Her body was slumped to one side, her skin pale, her eyes closed. There was no pulse, no signs of life, only the final stillness of a woman whose fate had been decided minutes earlier while the world remained unaware. She had been shot. There were no other adults in the house. No sounds of a struggle. Just a single act of irreversible violence. Her killer, her husband, was gone. And with him, the black Dodge Challenger that neighbors said had been parked outside earlier. A vehicle known in the area. Flashy, loud, impossible to miss, now vanished into the night. But what shattered the responding officers more than the lifeless body of Zaria was the discovery that followed. The children were still in the home. Her 2 young children, likely within earshot of the shot that ended their mother's life, were found safe, physically unharmed, but trapped in the aftermath of something they could never unsee or unhear. Their presence turned a tragic crime into a haunting nightmare. They were no longer just children. They were witnesses, survivors, orphans. Officers quickly secured the scene. Backup was called. The coroner was notified. And as first responders stood solemnly in the humid Georgia air, a sickening truth settled in the bones of everyone present. This wasn't just another statistic. This wasn't a case of private violence hidden behind closed doors. It was public, televised, foretold. The warning signs had been broadcasted in real time. Her final hours had played out not in secrecy, but under the bright, unblinking eye of social media, watched, commented on, dismissed. And now, the silence was permanent. The house was cordoned off with bright yellow crime scene tape that fluttered under the slow breath of the southern night wind. Cameras arrived, reporters, detectives. The neighborhood stared in disbelief as their once quiet street became the backdrop of a national tragedy. Inside that house, the echoes of that night would remain. The scent of blood, the baby photos on the fridge, the toys scattered across the floor, all now suspended in the strange limbo between life and death, love and violence, intimacy and murder. Zaria was officially pronounced dead at the scene. A mother, a daughter, a sister, a woman who had fought to be heard in her final hours only to be silenced in the very space she once called home. And the man responsible, her husband, her partner, the father of her children, was gone without a trace. This wasn't just another domestic dispute turned fatal. It was a tragedy witnessed in fragments, glimpsed by thousands, and still unanswered. The horror wasn't just what had been done. It was that it was seen, and yet nothing was done in time to stop it. In death, Zaria became what she had tried so desperately to avoid in life: a headline, a cautionary tale, a face on a poster for why we must listen the first time a woman says she's scared. But no headline could ever capture what was truly lost that night. 2 children will grow up with memories stained by trauma. Their mother's face frozen in time. Not smiling, not laughing, not dancing on TikTok, but lying still on the living room floor. Her final moments not surrounded by comfort, but consumed by betrayal. Outside, the world kept scrolling. But inside that house, everything had stopped. After the murder, police launched a multi-county manhunt for Shamarcus Carr. His car was spotted 80 miles away in Wayne County around midnight. When deputies attempted to stop him, he refused to exit the vehicle. Tension stretched for minutes. Then, just as officers surrounded the car, there was a single shot from inside. Shamarcus had turned the gun on himself. He died later at the hospital. A man once filled with pride and bravado, now a headline in a tragedy of his own making. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation ruled the case a murder-suicide. No further suspects, no more Facebook Lives, only silence. In the weeks that followed, tributes poured in for Zaria. Flowers outside her home, hashtags online, vigils for a woman who tried to be heard, for a mother who fought until the end to protect her peace. But the questions remained. Why didn't more people take her warning seriously? Why did viewers laugh at a woman facing death? Why didn't anyone intervene? How many women like Zaria are hiding in plain sight, smiling for followers while suffering in silence? Zaria's death wasn't just another domestic violence case. It was a broadcasted execution, a national reminder that danger doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the man who once said he loved you. Today, 2 children are without a mother. A family is broken. And the internet is left haunted by the memory of a tragedy that played out live, while the world watched and did nothing. Please subscribe for more. Support us.